Hey guys, Jeff Sprague here, Bass Pro Tour MLF angler. We're going to do a quick recap over the 2020 Lake Eufaula event. Lake Eufaula is a very special place. I've been there one time before. I really enjoyed it. It's got a great river system that runs through that lake. It can be controlled by the dam. They can let the water in, let the water out. It's got a lot of backwater sloughs, a lot of river to it, a lot of shallow flat stuff, and obviously it's got some deep stuff to it. We don't get a whole lot of practice here on the Bass Pro Tour, and so it's kind of a little bit of a gamble on which way you want to go with your practices. So all that being said, I want to put in perspective, I was dealing with a severe back injury there, and I've never had a back injury before. I'll tell you right now, if you have a back injury, my heart goes out to you, because I've never experienced an injury like that before, to where I could not stand up and fish. I literally couldn't even walk a few days prior to that event, and I highly contemplated on trying to get a medical leave, but that would pretty much put me out of the Red Crest and out of the Bass Pro Tour for the 2020 season. So I decided against it, figured we'd push our way through it. And I'm so glad that I did. That event was kind of a cool water event, and it would have been a little bit beneficial to maybe even slow down a little bit. And so starting my practice off, I went out, and you can do one of two things. Either you can pick an area and try to pick it apart, or you can try to see as much of the lake as you can. And my style is just to see as much of the lake as I can actually see. So I start running the lake, and I stop and fish here or there just a little bit, just to kind of get a feel for maybe what the fish are doing and things like that. But I do want to see the majority of the lake. So I run from pretty much the dam of the lake all the way up that Chattahoochee River. I'm not really good with the names of the pockets and the creeks on that lake, but I saw a lot of that lake in a day and a half. We had some pretty adverse weather conditions in practice, kind of like what we have here now. Wind blew, rain, torrential rain. That lake came up over a foot on the day off, I believe closer to 2 feet. And then they turned around and yanked it down an additional foot. So a 3 foot variation in water over a 4, 5, 6 day period just had the fish displaced, and actually throws a good curveball our direction, not just in the water level, but the water temperature, because we had some cool rain come in. So the fish that were coming really backed off, and it really played into some guys' hands who ultimately looked offshore. I didn't look offshore. The water was muddy. Eufaula usually is, kind of have some good stain to it. And when we got all that rain, it really even muddied up even more. So I really didn't even take into consideration going out there and look. And so a lesson learned on my behalf, but it was still a great event. I did a lot of things in that event that I wouldn't normally do, including sitting down and fishing. I kind of put my boat into some areas where I had just a couple of bites the short amount of time that I fished, and based off of what I was looking for, I was basically betting on the come. I was betting on the fish to come to me, and I felt like they would have been coming, because we had a really good warming trend before we got the cold rain, and the fish, when you would fish, they were there. They were big, they were angry, they were fat, and they were ready to be up there. Unfortunately, when the rain did come and the lake came up so high, they moved in immediately. That's why we had such a good day one there. I caught, doesn't sound that great, but I had like 18 pounds or something. I was in 8th place, I believe, after the first day. And I kind of laid up on those fish, because I was banking that I would save some, because heck, I'm in 8th place and I only have 17 pounds. And I didn't feel like I had a chance to win the round to move on to championship. So I was going to kind of save those fish. And I did. So I laid up. Going out we have a day off, which the second group fished, and then we went out on our next day, and they had dropped the water close to 3 feet in my day off, from the day that I fished, the day off, to the time that I put my boat back in that lake. And I pulled up to my areas that morning, and it was like a whole new place, the whole new water. So I had to pretty much relearn and back out and look around and try to relocate any of the fish that were still there, and they had completely sucked them out. They had moved out, wasn't able to really get very many bites at all, and the ones that I did notice I got some smaller fish to bite, and so that was a little bit different for me, because all the fish that I had bite in practice were good ones. I mean, everything from high 2s, I had some really good fish, some good solid fish, and I don't set the hook on a lot of fish, but 1 or 2 here and there just to check, because you don't want to be getting a small fish bite and be the guy who had 1.5-pounders, you know, in an area and think you're going to set the world on fire, and then ultimately you needed 2.5-pounders or 4-pounders. So what a learning experience, and what an amazing fishery for them to be able to move the water up and down like that. And I really wish we could go back to that one again and do it over, because that lake could really show out. They live there. I did a lot of work that week, all on 2 pretty much primary baits. The first one is a Strike King 1/2-ounce spinnerbait. This is just chartreuse and white, and I would throw this up in the dirt and I would slow roll this thing back on the bottom. It was very methodical, very slow process, because basically all I'm doing is wanting to just bump the bottom, bump anything that's there, if it's a lay down, if it's a rock, it's a high spot, and pretty much drag it. Those fish weren't really active. This is actually on a 611. This is the bladed jig rod, and a square bill rod. I like this rod. It's got a little bit of parabolic action to it. It's got more backbone, lets that load up. And that's just the way that I like to fish. So keep that in mind. I pair that with a Hyperlight reel. That's a 7.5-to-1 reel. I like a high ratio, because a lot of times whenever I do get a fish to eat, they'll knock slack in your line and you got to catch up to them. So I used a little bit shorter rod for target casting. I'm able to really put it in there around those laydowns and around those grass holes and things like that. Really makes me accurate. I like that on 20-pound Strike King. This is the tour grade Strike King line. Brand new to have it out, and I was so thankful that I did when I got a couple of those bigger ones to eat. It was really key. So slow rolling this spinnerbait, and then whenever I was covering water, trying to move between pockets or between those little blank areas that I didn't have any confidence that I was target casting to something, I pick up the Thunder Cricket. The Thunder Cricket, I can attribute 1 key fish to this bait this week, and I remember it. I was moving down the bank and I was on high, picked up a 1/2-ounce Thunder Cricket, black and blue, and I start firing it down the bank, and I get to a little rounded point. There's nothing there other than just like some clay, and fire it way up there, bomb cast, and she just walks off with it, starts swimming out in open water, and it was 411 or 415, I believe, and that fish ultimately kept me in the top 10 in my second round there at Eufaula. So this is a very crucial bait that time of the year. You can cover water with it. I chose black and blue just because the watercolor in Eufaula was so dirty when we got back there. I actually have a Rage Menace on the back of that. The Menace helps me create a little more wake and keeps a little lift on this bait because I'm throwing it in such shallow water. I also keep that on tour grade Strike King 20-pound fluorocarbon. What I pair that with, this is a 7.6 mag trap rod by, it's the custom speed stick. This rod for me is really crucial in fishing like a bladed jig. And the Thunder Cricket is perfect for it. It's got a really long taper, and it's got a great tip with a lot of parabolic action about halfway down, which allows it to load up. And when those fish swim up behind a bladed jig, a lot of times you'll know they knock slack in your line, and you can reel and swoop that hook set. That's key for me. Key for getting the hook drove into those fish and to keep them coming, because a lot of times they'll outrun you even with the high speed 7.5-to-1 reel. This is the Pro TI 7.5-to-1, and they'll outrun you. So I think a little bit longer rod helps me keep more fish hooked up and keep ultimately ahead of the game and more fish in the boat. So that's a really quick recap of what happened at Eufaula and how we approached it. Got to see as much of the lake as we can, and that's just the way I like to practice. I like to look and see as much of the lake as I can in one day, and then I get to kind of pick it apart the second day hopefully and see exactly where I want to key in, because you never know what you're missing until you actually get to go look at it. And that's kind of the philosophy I go by. So I like to see the whole lake. Some guys, it works better for them to just pick a pocket or a creek and then pick it apart. I've done that as well. Unfortunately, Eufaula, I couldn't get up and get down with my back being injured. I actually sat on a butt seat all day and fished. But thankfully now we're about 85% healed up. I'm able to get in and out of the boat without help. So I'm really looking forward to getting after it this week here at Lake Okeechobee as soon as we get this cold front out of the way. So keep a few things of these in your boat, give them a shot in this cold water, and you know, I'm telling you, I feel like that's what the big girls eat. We got 5 guys this year that were following around here on the Bass Pro Tour. Check out all the episodes and follow along as you get to see us conquer each lake stage by stage and in day by day. And you'll get to see a lot of the things that go on behind the scenes and how much time and effort and strategy actually goes into one of these events. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you can make yourself a better fisherman based off of some of the mistakes that we're going to make out here. And we'll see you at the next event.